Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business podcast. I hope you are very well. Thank you for joining me today. I think this episode is going to be really instrumental and really help you in your business because it's the question that I think a lot of people go round and round in their head with and work out, like, how do I crack this? How do I crack the code? And that's around building an audience. You hear a lot people say, you need to build an audience, you need to do this, you need to do that. And sometimes it's like, well, how? What does that mean? How do I do that? And I'm going to break it down today really, really simply for you because it is simple to some degree. It's complex in the sense of you got to be consistent and you got to do this. And this is like years and years and years long journey. This journey doesn't really ever end, right? So buckle up, get a notepad and pen, get ready to really take this on and take something from it because I think it's important. And I'm simplifying it as much as I possibly can. So today we're talking about building an audience. I'm going to talk about the 3 options because ultimately you have 3 ways to grow your audience. It doesn't have to be that there's 100 different ways. There's 3 kind of core main ways that are structural and are key players and options in growing your audience. And I just want to circle back a moment. I don't know why I said circle back. I don't really ever say that. It's a bit weird, isn't it? It sounds very corporate. Go back a moment to why this is important, right? So just in case anyone's tempted to turn off and not listen to this, the reason you're listening to this and the reason that you need to build an audience is to do with your sales. If you want to make more sales, you need to build an audience. Your audience is who's going to buy from you. And so making more sales is really linked to expanding audience, having more people to buy your things. It is a numbers game. Business is a numbers game. Sales is a numbers game. The more people you have to sell to, the more sales you statistically will make and can make. I am not saying that you need 10,000 followers, 1,000 followers, 1,000,000 followers to have a really successful business. You don't. But the more people you have, the easier it does get, and the more chances you have at making really easy, simple, effortless sales. And so you are going to spend time building an audience, whether you think you are or not. You might as well do it well, and you might as well help yourself through the process. So when I think about people that do this very well, it's people who understand that this is a commitment and a long-term journey. This isn't a flash in the pan thing. It isn't a let's just see what happens. It isn't a kind of casual thing. I know that this is a priority and it's one of my key drivers of my business, whether that means someone else is helping you with it or whether you're the key one. This has to be on there as a solid item. So now I've got that disclaimer out the way. Let's go through the 3 options. So the 3 options you have, okay, is you either build an audience, you buy an audience, or you borrow an audience. Those are the 3 options. Build, buy, borrow. Okay? Super simple. Now, let's just talk through building an audience because that's the most obvious option and it's the one that most of us will do. And I'd argue it's the core one, okay? So the other 2 you can add into building an audience, but ultimately everybody is building an audience and that is something that you make a commitment to doing. So what do I mean by building an audience? You are creating consistent content around topics that you are passionate about, that links to your business, that links to whatever you're selling, that links to your cause and what you want to make impact in, and you consistently deliver and put out content. Now, consistently and frequency are 2 separate things. So it's not about you putting out 20,000 posts a day. It's about what are you committing to doing, but being committed to that and really thinking about, yes, I'm going to build an audience and I'm going to put something out that people want to consume and that is helpful for people. Now, the issue with that is that it does take time. Building an audience takes time. Some of you might get super lucky and you have a really viral video and it's great and it's linked to what you wanted to talk about and you get loads of followers. Amazing. However, most people who go viral are going viral on something that isn't linked to what they're actually wanting to build an audience around. So they can end up, they might end up with some followers, but they don't actually end up with followers that are linked to what they want. And in some respects, are therefore arguably to some degree worth 0. Okay? So don't obsess about going viral. But you have to understand that it does take time. And it takes years. Some people think, it takes a few weeks, it takes a few days. No, you've got to be consistent for years. So get out of your head that this has got to like pay you back really quickly, or you've got to magically have all of this sorted out. Like, you don't and you won't. The positive to building an audience is that it's free. And in 2023, we are so lucky that we can build audiences. We can build audiences for free across loads of different platforms, across social media, across new social media, like different things like Substack and sort of little small community things. Like, there's loads of things that you can do to build a free audience, which is incredible. Years gone by, that didn't exist. You had to pay for every single sort of audience that you acquired. This now, like, we have so much opportunity available to us. It's the easiest now than it ever has been. I mean, in the sense of like the options that you have available to you. I'm not saying that it's an easy walk in the park, because it isn't. So it is free, which is incredible. You also have unlimited opportunities with it. Like, Instagram doesn't give you a like, you can only do X, Y, and Z thing, and then you're booted off. You know, LinkedIn doesn't say you can only post once a week and you once a month. Like, imagine that. Imagine if you could only post once a month on each platform. What would you post? It's quite an interesting concept, isn't it? But, you know, the opportunities are unlimited. You can get friends from it, business from it, opportunities that you never had, book deals, like speaking opportunities. What your audience can give you is beyond what you can imagine right now for most people. There are unlimited opportunities with it. Also, when you're building an audience, you can generally build it around whatever topic you pretty much want, providing it's, you know, PG and allowed. However, it does need to be strategic. If you want to build an audience and you want to do it as fast as possible in the best way that is actually going to support your business, it needs to be strategic and it needs to be focused. It needs to have clarity around it, strategy around it, understanding around it, because that's going to really make the whole thing work and pay off and be faster than if you kind of just go about it and sort of see where it takes you. I have some tips and thoughts around just a very simple flow of how this would work, how you actually do it, because I think sometimes people think, well, how do you actually do it? So let's just have a quick conversation about that. A simple workflow, if you will. You need to make sure that your profile is optimized. It's optimized. What I mean by that is it's clear who you are, what your name is, what do you do? Is there a link in your bio? How can people connect with you? How can people buy from you? What do you stand for? Has it got a picture? Do you look credible? Like, your profile needs to be optimized to some degree, okay? It needs to be clear as to why you're there. Why are you taking up space on the internet? What's the deal? Why should people care? Then you want to start creating content. But before that, you need to understand why, like create a strategy. Now, I would argue it's really great if you could go and work with someone to help you create a strategy. There are content marketing strategists. There are people who will design strategy for your business. You don't necessarily have to pay for the execution of it. It's just that you pay for strategy, but you want some kind of strategy there. For some of you, if you're a small business owner, there is an incredible, amazing membership that my client and friend runs called Jessica Bruno, which is called the Content Club. And so many of you, some of you might even be enrolled who are listening to this. That is incredible it basically creates your strategy for you. It gives you prompts. It gives you all the things you need to do to go and create consistent content. It gives you email, social, basically around building an audience. I will leave a link below to that so that you can check it out. And it is like £30 a month, £35 a month, something around that. It is very cheap, very affordable, and it is packed full of value. And I'd really encourage you to check that out if you're someone who's like thinking, I haven't got £3,000, £2,000, £200, whatever, to spend on strategy, or £5,000, £10,000, like if you need something, that I would say is a really good option. And then from that point, once you've got your strategy and you're clear about what you're actually going to talk about, then you can start making and creating strategy. Content, not strategy. The other thing, and let's just talk through things that you would share. So if you're building an audience, you want to really share interesting pieces. So yes, there's going to be some education, but don't just share loads of educational content, because it isn't really going to support your business that much. You want to be looking at, how do you sell on there? selling on your social is what you really need to do. But in terms of building an audience, share behind the scenes. People love making connection with behind the scenes things. Share user generated content. So if you have clients, customers, encourage them to share content, and then you reshare that content to your page. And that's really, really incredible. For some of you, you can pay for user generated content to be created and then posted on your account, in terms of you hire a creator who just creates user generated content style content so that it looks like it's come from a consumer. It's not deceptive. I just mean it's just a style of content, and that can work really well, especially if you're a product-based business. But really understand what you're putting out there and why. You do want some expert content. You do want some really clear leadership content that's around your subject area to show your credibility, but also think about, what do you like watching? What do you like creating and consuming? Then sort of look at that and think, right, actually, yeah, I'm missing that in my own strategy. You then want to analyze what you're doing, okay? So you need to be consistent. And if you're at the beginning, you need to be really frequent. If you're using TikTok, you need to be frequent every single day, arguably multiple times a day. Like, you've got to really buy into, if you're going down the build the audience route, you've got to buy into what that's going to take and being consistent. And then you can analyze that. But you can only analyze it if it's consistent and there's data there. And so you need to do stuff for 3 months, 90 days, then have a look, then assess, then do another 90 days. Like, you can't be doing a week, 5 days, 1 month. It isn't enough. You need a good set of data. Some of you will be able to use a month-on-month data if you're quite an advanced business. But if you're starting out, the month is not going to be enough. So you've got to stay committed to this. Do more of what is working. But you've also got to be patient, because this is going to take time. And then you also need to adapt and evolve, because platforms change, trends change, what's working changes. You've got to be on the pulse with that. Hence why something like the content club that I was speaking about that Jess runs is amazing, because it really kind of bridges that gap, and she does the legwork for you, and she kind of will keep you up to date with, changes and evolution. But you can also do that via, following marketing experts, look at people that are really vocal about changes that are happening. But if you're building an audience, you need to be really consistent, strategic, and actually measure what is working and what isn't, and then tweak and then keep going. So that's one of the 3 ways to build an audience. Then let's move on to buying. So I said you could buy an audience. Now, I don't just mean go to a business, buying their Instagram page. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is paid media, which is essentially paid advertisement, which can be paid social media. So Facebook ads, Google ads. I suppose Google ads is not necessarily social media, but it's, paid ads, online advertising. You've got paid PR. You've got sort of, essentially, you're paying to get in front of people. And you're paying to get in front of a specific group of people that are the exact ideal client for what you do. It's not like similar, I'm talking exact. That's what you want to do. If you're going to pay for this, it needs to be exact, because you can have that. You can have that level. You can be picky. And you then pay, you exchange money for visibility. Now, what you can't guarantee is followers. You can't guarantee email addresses. Often, you can't guarantee the quality of that. But you can pay for space and pay to be visible to certain people who are the people that you're trying to find. The joy of that is it's quite unlimited in the sense of who you can access. That comes at a cost, and it can be expensive. So, if you go down the route of buying an audience, you can rack up a hell of a bill. Now, it also doesn't have to be out of reach. There's many small business owners that use ads. There's many people who use it as a key part of their marketing strategy and don't spend thousands and thousands of pounds every month and spend, £5 a day or £10 a day or whatever. And that can work. But I want to be very clear with you, and you need to understand that there's also some businesses that are spending hundreds of thousands of pounds every single month on ads to get audience growth. And that scale is very huge. There's some people spending £5 a day, and then there's other people spending hundreds of thousands of pounds. And obviously there's interspersed items between all of that. What I would say is, if you're a small business and you're looking to do this, is be really strategic again and have an understanding of what you're doing. It's really easy to just put money down the drain doing this. You really need to, try and get some expertise, try and look at, buy a course that's really credited or really good that you know of that someone's used. Speak to other people. Like, I would say you really need, if you're going to go down the paid ads route, to go with someone who is an expert, who can really help you to make sure that it works. Because I have a lot of people who come to me who've spent an awful lot of money and have gotten very little out of it. And that is not the true representation. Like, when paid ads are done well, they can be incredibly effective. Don't get me wrong, over the last year, 2 years, 5 years, it has decreased in the sense of, has it got more expensive? Arguably, yes. Has things changed? Yes. Has the market changed? Yeah. You need someone who's up to date with that. It's not like running Facebook ads back sort of 10, 15 years ago where you put $1 in and got X amount back and it was like, wow, this is mega, and you could duplicate and you could basically dictate how much money you want to make. It's not necessarily that simple anymore. But there are some very amazing people in their fields who are very good at this stuff, and I'm not one of them. I am not one of them at all, but there are some incredible people out there. The other issue with paid ads is, we've kind of touched on this, but you don't know if you're going to get anything back from it. And that is hard. There's a testing period where you've really got to test things. You've really got to be like, yeah, I'm going to test this because we don't know if it's going to work or not. It is trial and error. And I think that can be really worrying for people. It can be hard. It's just a tricky one sometimes. But if we're just going to go through a really simple workflow again, in terms of how would you do that? What's the strategy behind that? What does it look like? Let me just talk you through something really, really simple. But as I say, I want you to go and find, there's many experts on this, right? And also there's a lot of them that have podcasts, freebies, resources. Like, there's a lot of free education on YouTube and in people's businesses and the content that they promote, that it will allow for you to get some information to get going. But again, like, find out what they have and how much does things offer. Like, how much do they charge? Because I would argue it's part of your investment, and it's better off spending the money from a strategy perspective than just kind of seeing what happens and winging it. So you're going to choose your platform. Choose your platform that you're going to run your ad on. Google, Instagram, Facebook, I suppose it's Meta now, but TikTok, what are you going to run your ad on? You then need to set a budget. And you set a budget and you set a duration. So you work out kind of, what do you want to spend on a specific ad? You then create the ad content, which is either new content that's user generated. I would really recommend, like, I'm not an ads expert, but I tell you one thing, I would really recommend that you use a piece of content that has already done well. Don't create just a random piece of content and put ad spend behind it. You want to test it organically and check that the content you're trying to put out is actually good. So use a piece of organic content that is doing well. You then choose your placements of where the ad's going to be, what it looks like, where you're going to have it. If you're going to have a Google ad, what type? Is it a banner? Is it not? Where specifically it comes up on Instagram? Is it a post? Is it in feed? Is it stories? That kind of thing. And then you need to monitor it. And then you optimize it and you adjust it and you measure the results and you track it and you improve it and you tweak it. And you do this process of making small tweaks. Now, this is why I'm saying you need to kind of know what you're doing to some degree, because people can really help you, experts can help you to make sure that the tweaking and the optimization is actually working, versus you just money just going out of it and not having a clue what you're doing and just feeling like, oh, I've spent £500 this month, or I've spent $6,000 this month on ads and I don't know whether they're working or not. Like, it's not a good move. Like, please, please, please think about getting some expert support with that, because you need to be tracking it and you need to make sure that it works. In terms of a workflow, if you're going to go down the paid media route, I would say be careful. That is even less effective in the sense of getting you an immediate result and getting you, trackable things that you can work out, has it made an impact or not? I'm not saying don't pay for media or PR or exposure or visibility. I'm just saying when you're building an audience, often the paid media stuff is more of a brand building exercise than it is an audience growth exercise. Obviously, that's not always the case, but I'd say that ultimately, don't just see it as like, I'm going to buy a page in a magazine and beyond that, and that's going to miraculously increase my audience. Like, yeah, it might, but it also might not. And so be careful about that. Think about, okay, well, how much can I spend on ads for the same amount? And is that more of a trackable, provable, traceable thing? However, there is a time and a place for paying for paid media because of, the exposure it gets you, where certain people are. Brand, I would say for me, it's very much a brand strengthening, a brand identity, a brand exposure exercise, which is great. It's useful and needed in some places. So that's buying an audience. Next up, you've got borrowing an audience. So the final one is you can borrow other people's audiences. Now, I think this is really exciting. It's really good. It works fantastically well and is incredible, okay? If it's done well. And just to get clear on this, just in case you're wondering how this works, I'm talking about somebody has the audience of the ideal client that you want to work with. And then you are exposed to their audience and people get to know you via said person who runs and has that audience. And therefore other people see you and go, oh, I like her, she's really cool. And then go over to your audience, your page, your social, whatever. And there's then a follower for you and it builds your audience that way. And there's many reasons why this works so well. It's ultimately influencer marketing, right? This is kind of part of how influencer marketing works. It's not the full strategy, but it's part of it. And it works really well often because there's some credibility behind the person who owns that audience. And so if the person that owns the audience has an engaged audience where they really trust what the person is saying, if you're then exposed to that person, people, the whole trust factor of having to be like, well, is this person legit or not, gets massively reduced and isn't so much of an issue because the other person's already vetted them, is what, the general consensus will be. So borrowing audiences can work really, really well. In terms of practically what does that look like, it can be live, joint live videos, it can be podcast episodes, it can be giveaways, it can be like group events that people host, like you might have heard of a summit. There's lots of different ways that you can borrow audiences. It can even be just a case of someone getting on their stories and saying like, hey, I've worked with this person, I absolutely love working with them. Here's that connection. And, it then creates content that both parties can use. Like, this can be as big or a small scale as you wish for it to be, and it does work really well. However, the issue with it becomes finding the right audience can be tricky. Many people struggle because it's just difficult, right? You've kind of got to get the audience right, because otherwise you can end up just building people into your audience, but you're building them and you haven't got anything to serve them with, or it isn't the right fit. So finding those key people can be tricky. You've also got to find people who want to collaborate, which, for some people, they really struggle with that and don't want to. I love collaboration. I love the idea of lifting others up, right? Earlier in this episode, I was talking about Jess's Content Club, and that's like, I love promoting it because I think it's a really great product and I think it's fantastic. And that is meaningful to me. Some people you will find that maybe they have the audience that you want, but maybe aren't very open to kind of sharing, and that's okay, right? That's on them. Like, it's totally personal as to whether someone wants to or not. Some people will charge to get in front of their audience. Others won't. Many people won't. Many people will be happy to create something that's mutually beneficial for both sides. And obviously, if you also have an audience yourself, then that can kind of bring the value in if you can do sort of cross-pollination of the two different audiences. If you're someone who doesn't have an audience at all and you're trying to kind of go to someone who does have an audience and sort of be like, hey, I'm trying to build my audience, then you've really got to make sure that the value that you're delivering is super high and you're there for the right reasons, because otherwise it can feel like for the other person, like, well, what's the, what am I getting from this? But borrowing an audience is really amazing. And this is how, affiliate marketing works. When people are selling other people's things. Like, that ultimately is how that is all built upon, because it's built on trust and it's built on an understanding of someone has spent money, time, effort building an audience, and then you can tap into that by either paying for it or mutually kind of benefiting one another by doing an exchange of services or audience. Hopefully that makes sense. In terms of how do you do that, let's just talk through a very basic, simple workflow in the sense of what would that look like if you decided, actually, yeah, do you know what, I do want to borrow an audience. I think that's a good option for me. So you would need to identify what are the relevant accounts, what are the relevant communities, what are these relevant people, where are your dream clients hanging out, who owns those communities, who creates those communities. And then you want to build a relationship with that person. You want to think about, okay, well, how can I get in the room with this person? How can I speak to this person? How can we have a conversation? Do we want to be, friends or contacts, that sort of thing? And then you need to, at some point, propose value. Propose like, oh, I'd love to come and support you. I've got this amazing knowledge. I'd love to, deliver this thing for free, or, provide this workshop, for example. You then provide that quality content. So at the point in which someone says, yeah, actually, do you know what? I do have guest experts in my membership, or yeah, let's do a live together. You have to make sure that you rock up and you really provide something that's useful. Do not do something and then think, oh, that was a bit shit and I didn't really do a very good job. Really take the time to prepare or make sure that you're utilizing the opportunity to the best that you can. And then what typically you want to do is cross-promote that. So you want to say oh, I'm going live with so-and-so, or this person is, we're doing a live together, or I'm doing a workshop in their thing, or I'm going on their podcast, as a guest. Cross-promote that, because that really helps the other person normally at the same time. And you want to encourage engagement. You want to, encourage your audience to go and collaborate with whoever you've collaborated with and view it and comment and, follow them if your audience don't know who they are. And then you need to measure the results and have a think about, was that worthwhile? Did that feel good? Did you enjoy it? Did it have the audience that you were looking for? Was that a really good fit for you? Is there any kind of opportunities further along the line? And in the future, would you like to do that again? Have a think about those sort of things. It's also really important that you say thank you. You express your gratitude and you're really, grateful, because this often borrowing an audience is like a two-way street, and it's someone's doing someone a favor, or not even a favor, but you're exchanging something, and so it's important to say thank you. And then obviously afterwards you can analyze going forward, whatever other things you want to look at and how does that work. That is borrowing an audience. So those are the three things: building an audience, buying an audience, borrowing an audience. What's important to then look at and think about from that is, do you do one? Do you do all three? I would say, using all three together is a beautiful combination and is really powerful and really amazing. Not everyone can do that all the time. We're not there, I'm not there in the sense of having all three going on at once. Some businesses do from the start and, from day dot, some don't. Some people will use one. I would say it's nice to use two. It's really great if you can use two. But it's really helpful, I hope, for you to see those three laid out and kind of simplify it for you and see actually, yeah, let's get one thing going, then add another thing in, and then I can add another thing in and cross-pollinate, and you can connect them all together, which is really lovely. I have some final just pointers of other items that I wanted to discuss in this episode around building an audience that might be helpful as you embark on this journey now of building an audience. So, engaging regularly is really important. If you are building an audience, you're building a community. And if you're building a community, that requires connection and it requires conversation. And so be really clear and engage with people. Don't just have it as a one-way street. The more that you engage, the more connected they're going to be. And that arguably builds a lot more value in your brand and in your audience that you're building. It's not just about you getting to X number, because the number means nothing if people don't care. And the way that you get people to care is through connection and engagement and actually speaking to people. Next point, do what the platform that you're choosing to use wants you to do. This is not a time for you to be a rebel and be like purposely trying to do the opposite of whatever platform wants you to do. And the reason I say that is because some people make their life hard for really no reason, and it's just silly. Like, you don't need to do it. And so think about, right, this platform, I'm using X thing. How do they want my video to be? What format do they like it in? How long do they want it to be? Adhere to what they're telling you to do, because there's no point in you fighting back that. It's only going to make it harder for yourself. Purposely make it easier and lean into what things you can do to make your life just so much easier. Next, be agile. You need to be really agile. You need to be ready to move fast with this stuff, because things change, people change, platforms changes. What people want from content and audience and community is different, and that moves as culture moves and as society changes. So you've got to be ready to react and respond. Don't be the person that's kind of resisting doing something 6 months down the line because you're just really stubborn and don't want to do it. Like, just move with the times, because if not, you will get left behind. The next thing is to remember that collaboration is incredible. Collaboration is where some of the businesses that you see have managed to grow at the rate they have through collaboration. It's through who they know. It's through what conversations are they having. So engage in conversation. Engage with people in your, engage in competitors. There is so much power in you leveraging each other's audiences, right? Like, don't just see competition as like, oh, don't want to get involved with them. They're a risk and a threat. They're not. They can be some of the biggest cheerleaders for you and can send you work. So really think and value, how are you going to use collaboration in your business, and how does that help you and others? Next up, you need to be really clear in what you want to be known for and why. Often when we build an audience, this gets lost, and as the further we get down the line, the more lost it becomes, and then it gets really tricky and uncomfortable, and we all kind of feel a bit like, oh, I don't know. But you need to be really clear on, what do you want to be known for and why? Why specifically do you want to be known for that thing? And I highly suggest that it's similar to what you're selling. That's what I'm trying to get onto here. Like, it needs to be clear in what you're selling. The next point from that is, what is your message? It's really important for you to be clear in, what is your message? What are you sharing with the world? Why should the world care? Because if you don't know what your message is, you then start just creating random pieces of content and building random audiences here, there, and everywhere. And then you can often feel like you've got a lot of audience, like you might have a big audience, but it's really disjointed and is not working for you. So get clear on, what is your message? My final piece that I want to share with you, which is, I would say, arguably the most important, and is really key, is you have to remember to sell. Building an audience alone will not create you an amazing business. At some point, you have to sell. You have to have something available for people to buy. You have to be able to be like, come and buy this thing. I really believe in it. It's really amazing. Like, you need it because of X, Y, and Z thing. So many people build audiences and then don't sell and are horrendous salespeople. And it doesn't work, okay? You need to build an audience, an engaged audience, and then you also need to sell, and you need to promote, and you need to stand proud in what you have to offer. And that is a really key, important piece of this jigsaw. Some people have audiences of 10,000 people, 1 million people, 10 million people, and they can't sell anything. They don't make any money. They have an audience and they have a community, but they don't have any business. And sales is so important, and you have to prioritize it. It isn't an optional item. It is a key function in your business, and building an audience allows for sales to be easier and to feel really good, okay? But don't lose sight of that. Don't forget about that and think, oh yeah, well, just one day we'll sort that out. Like, no, sales needs to be top of mind. That is all for today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. I hope you're going to take away some learnings from this and implement it and think about, what am I doing already and where can I tweak or add something in? What are you going to try? This episode has been about building an audience. It's about the 3 options: build one, buy one, borrow one. I hope it's made you think. Take care, take some action, Come and join me in the next episode next week. Subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do, and I will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.